Welcome to True Echo, where powerful true-to-life stories remind us that strength doesn't always wear a suit and brilliance often hides in plain sight. In today's incredible tale, a CEO mocks a teenager in muddy boots, only to discover the boy's hands carry a legacy no one in the room could match. This story will challenge everything you think you know about genius, humility, and what real leadership looks like. The air inside Ultron Dynamics felt like the inside of a pressure cooker. The heat wasn't from the temperature, it was from the panic. 2 weeks had passed since the $6 million, 0 cents machine went down. It had been designed to revolutionize automated food packaging. But now, it sat like a fallen monument on the factory floor in Terre, Indiana, silent, still, and utterly useless. Engineers from across the globe had flown in, consultants had been paid tens of thousands, and still, the machine refused to work. Its blinking red sensors had become a symbol of corporate failure. Workers passed it in silence, like mourners circling a casket, not daring to look too long in case someone asked them to try. At exactly 3:15 p.m., a sleek black SUV screamed through the front gates, ignoring the speed bumps. Out stepped Quinn Bra's son, the CEO of Ultron Dynamics, in an Armani suit that cost more than some employees made in a month. His shoes clicked sharply as he entered the warehouse, cameras trailing him, executives whispering like altar boys behind a preacher. His silver watch glinted beneath the fluorescence as he strode toward the dead machine. So this is it, he sneered, standing before the silent failure. The miracle that's eaten $6 million and can't sort a box of crackers. Nervous laughter rippled through the room. No one dared speak. No one dared move. Then Quinn's gaze landed on someone near the back. Leaning beside a janitor's closet was a young black teen in a dusty flannel shirt and mud-covered boots. He didn't look like he belonged in a tech factory. He looked like he belonged in a field. Well, hell, Quinn said louder, angling for the cameras. Maybe we should give maintenance's family reunion a shot. The snickers came louder now. The boy, calm and quiet, didn't respond. Hey, mud boots. Quinn barked. You want to take a crack at it, or do you just clean up smarter men's mistakes? Before the teen could answer, a man rushed forward, older, tired, panic drawn across his face. Sir, he's just my nephew, the janitor said. Bo's waiting to ride home with me. He's not on staff. But Quinn waved him off. Relax, Marcus. Just trying to bring some levity into this hopeless circus. Then turning back to the teen, he smirked. So, Bo, why don't you show us what you've got? Or is that mop bucket more your speed? Bo didn't flinch. His voice came low, calm, and sharp. If I touch that machine, he said, it won't be for your amusement. The room shifted. Even the cameras hesitated. Marcus gripped Bo's arm. He's setting you up, son. They'll love to see you fail. But Bo gently pulled away. I just want to see what's so broken that nobody's willing to bend low enough to understand it. And then he stepped forward. One boot, then the other. Not with arrogance, but with something far stronger, clarity. The silence was deafening. Bo Harland's boots hit the factory floor with a deliberate rhythm, each step breaking through layers of judgment that had cemented long before he entered the room. He wasn't just walking toward the dead machine, he was walking through years of condescension, a lifetime of being underestimated, and generations of assumptions that came wrapped in tailored suits and Ivy League credentials. The engineers didn't move to stop him. Not because they approved, but because no one wanted to be the one to interrupt what they all assumed would be a public failure. Some whispered, he's bluffing, while others muttered, this'll be over in 30 seconds. But Bo didn't respond. He just walked, silent, focused, the factory's harsh fluorescent lights bouncing off his dusty flannel shirt and illuminating the calm storm in his eyes. When he reached the $6 million machine, still and blinking red like a patient slipping into a coma, he crouched. Slowly. No panic. No rush. Just the kind of steady movement that said, I've done this before. From his old canvas backpack, he pulled out a small Phillips screwdriver, the grip weathered, molded by time and familiarity. The whispers grew louder. Is he opening it? He can't do that. He's not authorized. But again, Quinbra's son, the CEO, raised a hand, his voice thick with smug amusement. Let the boy play. Maybe we'll get a fireworks show for our trouble. Bo didn't even glance his way. He opened a side panel and exposed a tangle of wires and sensors, cluttered, misaligned, and confused. It looked like someone had panicked mid-assembly, looped connections without understanding them, then closed it up and hoped for the best. And yet, everyone who'd looked before had missed the issue entirely. Bo didn't. This was installed backward, he murmured. A low rumble spread through the crowd like thunder gathering on the horizon. One of the engineers frowned, whispering, "What did he say?" Another leaned in, face paling. Bo remained calm. "Your polarity markers are reversed," he said softly. "You're routing power into a sensor array that wasn't designed to handle the voltage. Every time it tries to run a cycle, it short protects and reboots. It's doing exactly what it was built to do, it's protecting itself from you." Then he unclipped 2 wires, reversed their placement, rechecked the alignment, and examined the insulation. Every move was surgical, precise, patient, unhurried. Then, without any flourish, he stood up and pressed the reset panel. At first, nothing happened. The room held its collective breath. Then, a soft hum, like the heartbeat of something waking up. One by one, green indicator lights blinked on. The conveyor belt trembled. Gears shifted. Motors roared. And then the machine came alive. Fully. Perfectly. Smoothly. The floor erupted into gasps. Phones that had been recording to mock the boy now trembled in stunned hands. Someone clapped a hand over their mouth. Another whispered, "No damn way." But the loudest silence came from Quinbra's son. His smirk collapsed. Still, he tried. "Beginner's luck," he said, too quickly. "Probably just twisted the right wire by accident. Even a blindfolded monkey hits a button sometimes." A few nervous chuckles echoed, not out of agreement, but out of fear. No one wanted to seem like they were siding against the man with the power to fire them. Except one person. Andrea Lavin, head of systems architecture, stepped forward. Her heels clicked across the concrete like punctuation marks in a statement that hadn't yet been spoken. Her arms were crossed, but her eyes, sharp, calculating, had already made their judgment. "No," she said, her voice flat, surgical. "That wasn't luck. That was diagnostic precision. That was someone who listened to the machine better than any of us." The room turned. Quinn shifted uncomfortably. But Andrea's eyes stayed locked on Bo. "Where did you learn that?" she asked. "Who taught you to read a pulse regulator that way?" Bo looked at her. Not flattered. Not cocky. Just, calm. "My father taught me." Andrea raised an eyebrow. "And who's your father?" Bo didn't blink. "Travis Harland." The name landed like a hammer. Gasps. Someone whispered a curse. Another muttered, "No. That's not possible." One of the older engineers took a slow step back, his face draining of color. "That's the Travis Harland. The one from the early calibration patents. The guy who disappeared 15 years ago. He hasn't filed a patent in 13 years, Bo said quietly. And you've all been building on broken blueprints ever since." The room was silent. But not empty. Something had entered. Reverence. And then, as if the moment had been waiting for it, the front doors of the factory groaned open. A man stepped inside. Tall. Weathered. Black. He wore a canvas work jacket dusted with soil and grit. His pace was calm, unhurried. His presence, undeniable. He didn't walk like he owned the place. He walked like he had once built it. People parted. Some instinctively stepped aside. Others simply froze. And Quinn Brasson's breath caught in his throat. Because the man now walking toward the center of the room, was the ghost Alteran's engineers told stories about in onboarding sessions. The man who once redefined calibration sensitivity in industrial machinery. The man who vanished after rejecting a multi-million-dollar contract because it would have compromised integrity for convenience. Travis Harland. He didn't look angry. That was what made it terrifying. He looked tired. Wise. And, done with pretending. He walked directly to his son and placed a weathered hand on Beau's shoulder. A simple touch, but it landed like a hammer driving steel into stone. Quinn finally found his voice. "Mr. Harland, we didn't realize, your son, this is quite the surprise." Travis turned slowly. His voice was deep. Steady. "You didn't realize," he said, echoing Quinn's excuse. "But you pointed at him. Mocked him. Let your people treat him like a clown. Then when he did what none of you could, you tried to spin it. No one dared move." Andrea stepped closer now, her eyes flicking from Travis to Beau, then to the machine that still hummed behind them. She said nothing, but her silence was approval. Travis turned back to his son and spoke again, this time low, but heavy with meaning. "Beau's not here to impress you," he said, now addressing the room. "He's here because you built a machine wrong, and refused to listen to the people who could see it. You trust degrees, titles, salaries. But you don't trust hands. You don't trust humility." The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was transformative. It was respect. Beau didn't have to say anything. Not anymore. His hands had spoken. His legacy had just walked through the door. And for the first time in that factory's history, every eye looked to someone who wasn't wearing a suit, but still commanded the room. The humming of the machine provided a steady backdrop, as if punctuating every word that had just fallen from Travis Harland's mouth. For a long moment, no one moved, not the engineers who'd been mocking Beau minutes earlier, not the executives whose suits now felt thinner, and certainly not Quinn Brasson's son, who looked like the walls had closed in on him. The camera crew, originally brought in to document Quinn's triumphant leadership moment, now hesitated, unsure if they should keep filming. But they did. The footage was no longer capturing corporate bravado, it was recording a reckoning. Beau stood a little taller beside his father. He hadn't changed posture. Hadn't raised his voice. But the weight of the moment had shifted entirely in his favor. Quinn, still scrambling for control, forced a tight smile. "Well, this is all very inspiring, but let's not forget, this is still a company. Protocol matters. Procedures, safety, this young man violated every one of them." Before he could finish the sentence, Andrea Lavin took a full step forward. Her arms still crossed, but her voice cut like steel. "No, Quinn. He corrected what your highly paid consultants couldn't. And he did it without ego or excuse." She turned to Beau. "And that matters more than any procedure you selectively enforce." Quinn's nostrils flared. "You're defending a miner who tampered with high-voltage equipment." Andrea didn't flinch. "I'm recognizing someone who demonstrated a level of insight we haven't seen on this floor in years." Then, from near the control booth, another voice joined the fray, this one calm, commanding, and laced with quiet power. Eleanor Bright, senior director on the Alteran board, stepped into view. Known for her icy resolve and precision-like decision-making, Eleanor rarely spoke unless it was vital. Today, it was. "Mr. Brasson's son," she said, her voice low and clear, "you should stop speaking before you embarrass the board further." That was it. One line. But it landed like a gavel in a courtroom. Quinn's mouth opened, and then closed. He stepped back. Eleanor turned to Travis and Bo, her face softening ever so slightly. "Mr. Harland," she said with the faintest nod of respect. "Alteran would benefit from your guidance. I'd like to formally invite you to join our team as a technical advisor. Help us rebuild the standard we clearly lost." Travis didn't answer immediately. He looked to Bo. Eleanor followed his gaze, and then added, "And you, Bo Harland, we'd like to offer you a leadership role, head of innovation development. Your understanding of systems, your clarity under pressure, your initiative, it's all exactly what this company claims to value." The room waited for Bo's reaction. He looked from Eleanor to Andrea, then to the engineers and floor workers who now stared at him not with dismissal, but with something new, curiosity. Respect. Finally, his gaze returned to Quinn. "I'm not here because I want a job," Bo said evenly. "I'm here because something was broken, and no one wanted to admit it. I'm here because people like me don't get to be here. Not usually." He looked back to Eleanor. "If I stay, I need to be allowed to build it right. Not just the machines, but the way you listen, the way you lead, the way you see people." Eleanor smiled, just slightly. "Then we'll start with that." And just like that, the story shifted again. Not because a machine was fixed, but because something far deeper had been rewired. From that moment forward, the factory floor at Ultron Dynamics began to change. Not overnight. Not without friction. But steadily. Bo took the role, not for the title, but for the platform. He showed up every day in the same flannel shirt, the same boots, the same quiet confidence that had silenced a room. His leadership style was unlike anything the team had experienced. No shouting. No performance. Just results. And he didn't lead alone. Travis Harland became a presence on the floor, silent when it served him, instructive when it didn't. He walked the aisles like a seasoned craftsman surveying his forge. Technicians who once rolled their eyes at old school thinking now hung on his words like they were scripture. Andrea Lavin emerged as Bo's fiercest ally. Together, they reshaped innovation protocols, removed unnecessary bureaucracy, and created a lab environment where every idea was tested, not just the ones with expensive pedigrees behind them. One day, an intern hesitated before presenting an idea and Bo said to her, "Good ideas don't come from resumes. They come from people who listen before they speak." That became a motto inside the lab. Quietly painted on the wall one night by one of the workers who had once doubted him. Listen before you speak. And still, the machine that started it all. It ran better than it ever had. Months later, it hadn't glitched once. Bo's wiring fix became the new standard. His diagnostics were used in 3 other factories within the quarter. Quinn Bra's son, meanwhile, found his grip on the company slowly slipping. The board began asking more questions. About his leadership style. About his resistance to innovation. About his public behavior, now caught on dozens of viral videos replayed thousands of times online with captions like, "CEO mocks teen. Gets humbled in front of entire staff. Factory janitor's nephew just schooled a $6 million tech firm." He tried to spin it. Claimed he was being ironic. That it was all part of team morale. But it didn't work. Because the cameras didn't lie. Because silence doesn't forget. And because Bo Harland had done more than fix a machine, he had revealed a truth that Alteran could no longer ignore. Leadership isn't about volume. It's about vision. And Bo's vision was just getting started. The days that followed were unlike anything Alteran Dynamics had seen in years. The factory floor, once a cold parade of silent stares and ticking clocks, began to buzz with something new, purpose. Engineers no longer walked past machines in frustration, they approached them with curiosity. Technicians began to speak up in meetings they once dreaded. The janitorial staff was included in safety briefings for the first time in company history. And at the center of it all was Bo Harland, still 16, still showing up in the same worn flannel and mud-caked boots. The optics alone would have made for a viral PR campaign. But Alteron didn't need to manufacture anything. The story was real, and it resonated. Across the company's offices, Bo's name began to surface in conversations once reserved for executives and consultants. He didn't act like a leader. He just was one. And in the boardroom, the power dynamics were shifting. Quinn Brosson was still CEO, but every attempt he made to reassert his authority came off hollow. His voice lacked the conviction it once had. The board no longer nodded automatically. Andrea Lavin challenged him openly. Eleanor Bright sat through meetings silently, then requested follow-ups, without him. His name was no longer the gravity pulling Alteron's future forward. Bo Harland's was. And yet, Bo didn't chase recognition. He chased progress. Working closely with Andrea and his father, he began redesigning key components of the company's flagship automation systems. He rejected overly complex circuit paths, replacing them with logic built on simplicity and resilience. He incorporated fail-safes inspired by irrigation patterns on his grandfather's farm. His code wasn't perfect, but it learned. His systems didn't dazzle, they endured. The workers started calling it Harland logic. Even Travis raised an eyebrow at that. But Bo stayed grounded. Every day, he arrived before the senior engineers. He walked the lines, checked diagnostics himself, and talked to floor workers like equals. Because to him, they were. One afternoon, a junior tech named Elias stopped him in the hallway. "Bo," he said nervously, "you know they're talking about offering you the CTO seat, right?" Bo shrugged. "That's not why I'm here." Elia blinked. "Then, why are you here?" Bo looked at the humming machines around them. "Because things are broken," he said simply. "And I like fixing what people gave up on." That line would later be quoted in a Forbes article titled, "The Boy Who Rewired a Billion-Dollar Company." And while Bo moved forward, Quinn Brosson unraveled. Emails surfaced, angry tirades sent to staff, blaming others for his oversight. Video clips from the factory incident were shared in tech circles, education conferences, even a political commentary show. Memes exploded. And while Bo ignored them, Quinn could not. Every scroll, every headline, reminded him that his throne had become a stool. Eventually, Quinn made a desperate play. At a quarterly shareholder event, he took the stage and gave a rousing speech, peppered with buzzwords: revolutionary, synergize, diversify leadership. Cameras flashed. Applause followed, politely. But when Bo took the stage next, the room leaned in. He didn't bring notes. Didn't wear a suit. He wore his usual, rolled sleeves, jeans, dust on his boots from the test floor. His voice was steady, conversational. "I wasn't supposed to be here," he said. "I was just a kid waiting for my uncle. I didn't come in with a resume. I didn't even plan to speak. But a broken machine called me out. And when I looked around, no one else wanted to bend low enough to see what was wrong. So I did." He paused, looking out at a sea of wide eyes and frozen pens. And that's what innovation is. It's not an app or a product. It's humility. It's seeing what's broken and deciding it's still worth fixing. The applause this time wasn't polite. It was thunder. A few weeks later, the board met in private. The decision was swift. Quiet. Strategic. Quinn Brosson was asked to step down. Officially, it was termed a graceful transition. In reality, it was exile by consensus. There were no farewell speeches. No press releases filled with platitudes. Just an email. Sent late on a Friday. Quinn walked out of the building the following Monday with no cameras, no entourage, no ceremony. Bo had offered no comment. Because his attention was already on what came next. In the weeks that followed, Bo introduced a series of protocols that changed Alteron's DNA. He set up cross-training workshops so technicians and coders could better understand each other's pain points. He required at least one line-level worker be present in every planning session. And perhaps most revolutionary of all, he ordered a full audit of the company's hiring pipeline, demanding transparency around how talent was being evaluated. Andrea backed him. Eleanor supported him. Even Travis, who had once sworn off the corporate world, began showing up more regularly, not as a relic from the past, but as a builder of its future. Together, they rewrote more than circuitry. They rewrote culture. And still, Bo didn't crave the spotlight. In interviews, he talked more about the people around him than himself. In meetings, he asked more questions than he answered. His leadership wasn't built on control, it was built on clarity. And slowly, word spread. Journalists came not to profile Quinn anymore, but to learn how a janitor's nephew with dirt on his boots had become the architect of a corporate renaissance. They called him a prodigy. He said he was just paying attention. And quietly, Alteran Dynamics, once a struggling tech firm gasping for relevance, became a symbol. A symbol of what happens when a closed system opens its doors. When people start listening. And when the person you overlooked turns out to be the blueprint you needed all along. Bo Harland stood at the edge of the design lab, watching a team of engineers puzzle over a conveyor node he had redesigned only weeks prior. The node was simple, sleek, clean, and efficient, but it worked differently than what they were used to. Not worse. Just smarter. One of the senior engineers scratched his head, turned, and called across the room, "Bo, can you walk us through the timing logic again? I know it's not how we were trained, but the performance stats are crazy good." Bo walked over, crouched beside the table, and explained the concept without condescension, using a metaphor from planting season on the farm. "You don't force the soil," he said. "You work with it. Same with the rhythm of a load cycle. Let it tell you how it wants to flow, then refine it, not control it." They nodded, took notes, and some smiled. This was what made working with Bo different. He didn't just give answers. He made you feel like you could find them too. But outside the lab, the rest of the world was starting to take notice. And not everyone was happy. Bo had unknowingly started a quiet revolution, not just within Alteran Dynamics, but across the tech industry. Legacy companies took note. Think pieces were written. One blog post from a rival tech CEO asked pointedly, "Are our machines failing because we're ignoring the mud on the boots?" Bo didn't respond publicly. But the board at Alteran was watching everything. Eleanor Bright summoned him one afternoon to a meeting with the company's executive transition team. When he arrived, she was seated at the long glass conference table, flanked by 3 board members and an HR lead. "Bo," she said without preamble, "we'd like to offer you the position of Chief Technology Officer." The room went silent. The title alone was massive. Power, salary, global recognition. But Bo's response was immediate. No. The HR rep looked stunned. One of the board members shifted awkwardly. Eleanor, however, simply nodded. "I figured you might say that," she said. Bo leaned forward, calm but firm. "I don't want to manage people. I want to build things. If I take that seat, I spend my time in meetings explaining vision instead of chasing it." "But you have vision, Bo," one director said. "You're changing the company. We need that in the C-suite." Bo shook his head. "Then let me build the seat. Don't fit me into a mold you've already broken. Let me shape the role around the work that matters." Eleanor's lips curled into a faint smile. "Then help us write it," she said. What followed was another first in the company's long history. A brand new executive track was created, Director of Human-Centered Systems Innovation, designed by Bo, for Bo. It was a hybrid role, bridging fieldwork and vision building, engineering and ethics. It didn't just create space for Bo. It created space for others like him. And people came. Engineers from marginalized backgrounds. Women who'd been passed over. Veterans. Community college graduates. People who didn't fit the algorithm of corporate success but carried insight that couldn't be taught. Bo welcomed them all. He set up mentoring teams, peer learning cycles, and made sure everyone had a seat at the table, especially the ones who never had before. Word spread fast. Articles were written. Documentaries proposed. Even a few government agencies reached out about collaboration. Still, Bo stayed grounded. Because every time he felt the pressure rising, he went home. Back to the farm. Back to where it started. He and his father would sit on the old porch at sunset, sipping lemonade and listening to the quiet hum of machines in the distance. Funny, ain't it? Travis said one evening. You walked into that factory just looking to hitch a ride home. Now they're asking you to design the future. Bo smiled. I didn't plan it. I just paid attention. Travis looked out over the fields. That's the trick most folks forget. They chase glory. But the work? The work is what matters. Bo nodded. Still a lot to fix. Always will be, his father said, putting a hand on Bo's shoulder. But you ain't alone now. That night, Bo drafted the opening lines for Alteran's new internal design charter. We don't build to impress. We build to understand. Every system, every line of code, every machine, must respect the hands that made it and the people it serves. The document would be printed and displayed in every factory, every meeting room, every onboarding packet. It became the company's new compass. And the shift wasn't just internal. Customers noticed. Quality soared. Machine errors dropped. Alteran's reputation rebounded, and then exceeded anything it had ever known under Quinn's leadership. But not everyone outside welcomed Bo's rise. A powerful shareholder from a rival firm sent a private email to the board, warning them that Bo's philosophy-driven engineering would undermine their competitive edge. Eleanor leaked it, intentionally. The backlash against the shareholder was immediate. A flood of support for Bo came from customers, engineers, and the public. For once, the idea that character and capability could coexist wasn't just a slogan, it was a movement. And at the heart of that movement was a boy who never asked for a microphone. Never chased a title. Never needed validation. He just saw a broken system and bent low enough to understand it. Bo Harland stood once again in front of the same machine that had once silenced a factory full of doubters. Only this time, it wasn't malfunctioning, it was flawless. Its belt rolled smoothly, its lights blinked in perfect rhythm, and its processors responded with the speed and stability of something reborn. Around him, a small group of visiting engineers and interns watched, taking notes. This machine, Bo said, is no longer a trophy piece. It's a teacher. He paused, then pointed to a line of code on a tablet nearby. Every adjustment we made was based on human observation, not just data. That's why it works. In that moment, it was clear, Bo wasn't trying to impress anyone. He was building a culture. One where wisdom and curiosity sat side by side. Where a question held more power than a title. But with rising fame came rising pressure. A major industrial trade expo in Chicago reached out. They wanted Bo to deliver the keynote. It would be his first time speaking outside of Alteran. He hesitated. He didn't like spotlights, they felt unnatural. But Andrea, always the realist and his closest ally inside the company, reminded him of something simple. You're not doing this for the cameras, she said. You're doing it so the next kid in muddy boots isn't laughed out of the room. Bo agreed. The night before the expo, he and his father sat in a quiet hotel room overlooking Lake Michigan. Travis polished his boots while Bo flipped through the draft of his speech. You nervous? Travis asked, not looking up. Little bit, Bo admitted. Feels like I'm representing more than just me now. Travis leaned back in his chair. That's 'cause you are. But you're not carrying the weight. You're lighting the way. Big difference. Bo took a deep breath, folded the speech, and placed it in his back pocket. He didn't need the words. He'd lived them. The next morning, Bo took the stage to a packed auditorium of industry leaders, engineers, developers, and skeptics. The buzz before his entrance was a mix of curiosity and disbelief. A teenager? Headlining this? Bo didn't walk out in a suit. No tie. Just a clean flannel, pressed jeans, and the boots that started it all. The moment he appeared, the audience fell quiet. He didn't open with a quote. He opened with a question. How many of you have ever overlooked someone because they didn't look the part? The silence deepened. I know you have, he said calmly. Because I've lived it. He told them the story of the broken machine. Of the CEO who mocked him. Of the engineers who laughed. And of the lesson the system taught him, that progress dies in rooms where only the loudest voices are heard. He didn't speak long. Barely 12 minutes. But when he finished, the standing ovation lasted nearly 2. It wasn't the speech itself that moved them. It was the truth behind it. The clarity. The vision of a future that welcomed more than just degrees and credentials. After the expo, Alteran received over 2,000 job applications in under 48 hours. But Bo didn't change. Back at the factory, he returned to the floor as always. Same route. Same pace. Same quiet demeanor. Except now, people turned when he entered, not out of fear, but out of respect. Even the boardroom felt different. Once rigid and defensive, it had become a place of collaboration. Eleanor Bright, now serving as interim CEO, pushed forward the initiative Bo had suggested, a complete dismantling and rebuild of Alteran's internship and hiring systems. Instead of basing entry on resumes alone, they launched a nationwide campaign inviting students, technicians, and hobbyists to solve real engineering problems, and rewarded creativity, not credentials. The result? A new class of recruits from underrepresented communities, rural areas, trade schools, and inner cities. People who would never have made it past a recruiter's desk. One of them, a young girl from Flint, Michigan, created a sensor prototype so effective it cut machine errors by 17% across the board. Bo personally mentored her. And then came the twist no one saw coming. A well-funded competitor, unable to compete with Alteran's cultural momentum, launched a smear campaign. They leaked old internal footage from the day Bo first fixed the machine, trying to paint it as staged. They paid influencers to question his legitimacy. Claimed Travis Harland had rigged the system behind the scenes. The media storm ignited. Talk shows debated it. Commentators called Bo everything from brilliant fraud to manufactured genius. For 3 days, Bo said nothing. And then, at an emergency town hall meeting inside the factory, he walked to the front, held up the leaked footage, and played it on the screen for everyone to see. No editing. No filters. Just truth. He stood beside the projection, 16 years old, crouched beside the open machine, calm, focused, unshaken. Then he faced the crowd. Truth doesn't need PR, he said. It just needs to be shown. Over and over, until the noise drowns itself out. The silence in that room was louder than thunder. And from then on, no one questioned Bo Harland again. Because no one had to. Later that year, Alteran was named one of the most innovative companies in America, not for its products, but for its transformation. It became a model of how inclusion wasn't a favor. It was a force multiplier. And at its center stood a young man who never asked for a crown, but rebuilt a kingdom by refusing to quit when the world told him he didn't belong. The first snow of the season dusted the edges of the Alteran Dynamic sign out front, but inside, the factory hummed with warmth and movement. Machines that had once stood silent now worked in harmony. But more importantly, so did the people. Bo Harland walked the floor that morning with his boots still tracking in dirt and slush from the outside, nodding as he passed clusters of engineers, techs, and interns. Some of them greeted him like an old friend. Others, new hires, looked at him with wide eyes, still not believing the company's most talked-about figure actually worked beside them. He stopped at a terminal where two junior coders were arguing about voltage thresholds. They quieted when he approached. "Keep going," he said with a faint smile. "Let's hear it." The coders exchanged a glance, then resumed their conversation, but slower, more thoughtful now. Bo didn't interrupt. He let them reason it out, only stepping in at the end to nudge them toward a conclusion with a question, not an answer. That was Bo's gift. Not just seeing what was broken, but teaching others how to listen to the parts of a system most people ignored. Later that day, in a meeting with Andrea Lavin and Eleanor Bright, he reviewed the quarterly metrics. System reliability was up 42%. Employee retention had doubled. A third-party audit of company culture had returned an unheard-of satisfaction score of 97%. But Bo barely reacted. "It's good," he said, scrolling through the data. "But the point isn't to keep proving we're right. The point is to stay curious." Andrea leaned back in her chair, impressed. "You know, you're 20 now. Most people don't talk like that until they've spent decades in this world." Bo shrugged. Maybe they should have listened earlier. Everyone in the room smiled. Outside of Alteran, the world continued to evolve. Other companies began modeling their internal systems after Bo's playbook. Some called it the Harland effect. Industry veterans who once scoffed now quoted his principles in TED Talks and white papers. One of the most telling signs of Bo's impact came from a rural high school in Georgia. The school had printed out Bo's first speech and hung it in their tech lab, right next to a photo of him in his flannel and boots. Below it, in bold print, "Don't wait for permission to solve what's broken." Back on the farm, Travis Harland still lived a quiet life. Bo visited every weekend, and they worked side by side repairing old tractors, rebuilding generators, and, on quiet days, just sitting on the porch with mugs of strong coffee, watching the wind move through the cornfields. One Sunday morning, Bo arrived early and found Travis tinkering with an old engine block. Without looking up, his father asked, "You remember when you were 11 and wired that broken hay baler with parts from a lawnmower?" Bo grinned. "Took me all night. And you swore to me you weren't tired." "I was lying." Travis chuckled. "Well, you're still doing the same thing. Except now it's not balers, it's people. Companies. Systems." Bo looked at him seriously. "Sometimes I wonder if it's enough." Travis wiped his hands on a rag, then turned. "It's more than enough," he said. "You walked into a room that wanted you to fail, and you built something they couldn't. Not just machines, but belief." Bo didn't say anything. He just nodded. That afternoon, they shared a quiet meal. No boardrooms. No cameras. Just two men, one legacy, and the unspoken understanding that none of this had happened by accident. 6 months later, Alteran held its first Open Systems Summit, a new tradition that brought together thinkers, builders, and creators from all backgrounds. The keynote speaker was expected to be a tech celebrity from Silicon Valley, but when the crowd gathered, it was Bo who stepped up to the mic. He didn't prepare a flashy speech. He just spoke from the place where all his work began. "When I walked into this company, I was invisible. That's not an exaggeration. I was literally mistaken for someone's ride home." He let the laughter fade. "But I fixed a broken machine. Not because I wanted to impress anyone, but because I saw something worth saving." He paused. "And here's what I've learned, the most powerful force in innovation isn't genius. It's humility. It's the willingness to bend low, to admit you don't know everything, and to listen to the people no one else hears." The crowd was silent again. Some stood. Some wept. You don't change systems by yelling at them, Bo said finally. You changed them by walking in with your hands open and your ears sharper than your pride. The applause shook the room. And outside, for the first time in decades, Alteran Dynamics was no longer a company trying to survive. It was a company others looked to for how to thrive. In the final scene of the story, Bo stood alone at dusk inside the factory. The machines were quiet now, resting. He approached the same zero-sense unit that started everything. It still worked flawlessly. He reached out and touched its side, feeling its hum. He closed his eyes. Not because he was tired. Because he was listening. To the machine. To the world. To the part of him that never wanted to be seen as a prodigy. Just as someone who looked closely enough to care. And cared deeply enough to fix what others walked past. This wasn't the end. This was the beginning of everything. In a world that often confuses status for substance, Bo Harland showed us what real brilliance looks like. Not loud. Not entitled. But rooted in humility, persistence, and an unshakable belief that every broken system can be rebuilt, if someone is willing to bend low enough to understand it. As Bo once said, you don't get excellence from a spreadsheet. You get it from people who care. If this story moved you, challenged you, or reminded you of someone quietly making a difference, subscribe to True Echo, leave your thoughts in the comments, and share this video to inspire others who may be one chance away from changing everything.